Hi all, let's continue our wonderful look at sacrifices, another amazing aesthetic experience I believe we can have with Magnus Carlsen, the current world chess champion, in 2005. So looking in particular at 2005, which we haven't covered. So Magnus, born 1990, was about 15 years old this year for these example games. There's a summary of Magnus's highlights of 2005, which I'll read from Wiki. Apparently in the Smartfish, not Stockfish, the Smartfish Chess Masters event at the Drammen International Chess Festival 2004 to 2005, Carlsen defeated Alexey Shirov, who was then ranked number 10 in the world, as well as the co-winner of the tournament. In the semi-finals of the Ciudad de Leon Rapid Chess Tournament in June, Carlsen played a 4-game match against Vishy Anand, who was ranked 2 in the world at the time and had won the 2003 World Rapid Championship. Anand won 3-1. In the Norwegian Chess Championship, Carlsen again finished in shared first place, this time with his mentor Simon Ashdin. A playoff between them was played between 7th and 10th of November. This time Carlsen had the better tiebreaks, but the rule giving the title to the player with the better tiebreak scores in the event of a 1-all draw had been revoked previously, so the match was closely fought. Ashdin won the first game, Carlsen the second. The match went into a series of 2 game rapid matches until there was a winner. Carlsen won the first rapid game, Ashdin the second. Then there followed 3 draws until Ashdin won the championship title with a victory in the 6th rapid game. Carlsen in Warsaw 2005. At the end of 2005, he participated in the Chess World Cup in Khanty-Mansk, Russia. In the knockout tournament, he upset the 44th ranked player Zurab Ashparashvili in round 1 and proceeded to defeat Farrukh Amonatov and Ivan Cheparinov to reach the round of 16. There, Carlsen lost to Evgeny Baryaev, but then won against Joe Lautier and Vladimir Malakov before losing again to Gatakamsky. Thus Carlsen finished in 10th place and became the youngest player to be an official World Championship candidate. So this is all happening in 2005. Magnus Carlsen was an official World Championship candidate back then. So in the light of the current World Championship match coming up this year, 2014, in a few days, this is very interesting stuff. In October, he took first place at the Arnold Ekrim Memorial in Gorsdal with a score of 8 out of 9 and a performance rating of 2792. So, okay, so that's the year in a nutshell, according to Wiki. So let's have a look at one of the classic games Magnus had against the top 10 player in the world, fire on board, Alexey Shirov, who was playing black here. Shirov had just played c takes d4. Now, yeah, this looks like a very, very interesting position. What's going on here? The rook's attacked, and my stockfish is indicating that maybe one of the better moves is here. Magnus actually played this, and it seems quite daring to leave the rook hanging. Shirov didn't actually take this. Maybe he didn't like the feel of his king safety. The best move is apparently might actually be to take it. Shirov played this, maybe trying to keep the position, his sort of advantages in the position, which is White's crumbling centre he just took here. So it's a kind of, maybe it's a little bit of a dodgy sacrifice from a scientific perspective. But let's have a look if it had been taking here. And now, I mean, this looks like a dangerous position generally. How does black defend against things like queen d3, for example? Okay, knight f8, knight f5. It just looks pretty scary stuff. Maybe Shirov didn't fancy this. Looks a little bit scary, but apparently there might be defensive resources here. So yeah, Shirov's move seems fairly sensible as well. So okay, he's not exposing his king as much. He's keeping the shield around his king. Any better tries there? Just before we pass this off, I mean the engine's indicating to take here and queen e2 actually. I think, okay, let's go with queen e2. It threatens an immediate queen g4. which would be quite destructive. But apparently black can either take on e5 with the bishop or queen. So say here, check, and then king h8, knight f5. So white's threatening now bishop g7, mating. So rook g8, attacking, counter-attacking the queen actually. So knight takes, rook takes g4. Yeah, black can afford to counter-sacrifice the rook. This position, apparently this is going to be okay, nice for black. Yeah, that kind of example. So, but yeah, there's some dangers here. So Shirov, he tried to navigate away from them with Hg, maybe keeping to simple chess in inverted commas. But Magnus still plays very aggressively now with knight f5, believe it or not. Now he's threatening knight takes with check. Okay, so Magnus is intent on attacking Shirov. If the rook had moved, well, it can't move really there. It could just be taken. So if it retreats, it's a bit lame. I think actually now here, black could consider d3, just to open up this diagonal here, and now bishop takes e5. And there's things like queen h4 here, which is going to be good for black. So anyway, back to the game. So knight f5. So Magnus is really trying. It's like playing like Talon in this game. Now this was snapped off, and we see this dangerous looking check. Knight g6. Bishop takes f5. So yeah, it's piece sack against a 27-2-6. Yeah, is it sound? Queen takes e5 was played. Now here, the engine thinks actually a much better move is bishop takes e5. After which, say rook g4, queen d6, with bishop c8 to follow. It looks as though white's attack might be running out of steam simply in this continuation, but let's have a look at the steam that exists with h4. So we're threatening out h5. Black has bishop c8, and now at knight h5 we can take here, and in this position we can play a check and rook e5. Apparently, I mean, the advantage is actually minusculely in black's favour, less than 0.40 actually. So Magnus Carlsen's judgment for the attacking potential on the G file seems actually pretty good. Yeah, if this position, this looks pretty scary actually. Yeah, even in the bishop takes e5 variation. So it seems there's chances for white. It seems there's play here. Queen e2. So, but anyway, we'll go back. In this position, in fact, bishop takes e5 wasn't played. Queen takes e5 was played. And we see now rook g4. And with rook g4, okay, there's a lot of pressure on g6. White's potentially now playing queen d3 to put more pressure on g6. I think that's one of the main things. I mean, there's also a secondary queen f2 idea, but queen d3 seems to be the main intention right now. We see Shirov playing bishop g7, which might be one of the strongest moves. Bishop takes g6. F takes, rook takes g6. So is it a trivial problem, this g7, when it's protected? But now the other rook comes in to double. So this looks tricky. Okay, white is now threatening basically rook fg4. And if here queen e3 check, I think this can be taken with advantage to white after this move. It looks scary with the pawn, but rook takes, come back for the pawn, or just play king f2 here. We'll play king f2. I think we can just block the pawn with king e1 elegantly, because it's a light square bishop. Apparently this position is better for white here. It looks scary, but it's better for white apparently. A bit. It's opposite colour bishops. But anyway, in the game we see bishop e4, which might be a blunder. It's approaching move 40. Maybe Shirov was short on time. It doesn't look as though it should be a blunder, should it? Because yeah, where does the rook go. Isn't it annoying? Well, funny enough, okay, with the kind of weakness of the last move, it's blocked the queen from queen e3 actually. And here, Magnus's next move, from an engine perspective, takes the advantage well in White's favour, with rook here attacking the queen. So we've got this horrible pin against g7, and it seems actually this is a kind of two weaknesses of the last move, actually, not just blocking the queen, it's kind of potentially a loose piece in its own right, what I'd call a double weakness of the last move, this bishop e4 potentially, because now it becomes a loose piece by force after queen e6. Magnus, when he takes on g7, he's weakening d4, which is a double attack. So he just plays bishop takes g7, and Shirov resigned here, he's just crumbled. So I think you could consider that a double weakness of the last move, it's a loose piece. If he had played on here, we see black just crumbling. Queen takes d4, black's actually lots of pawns down. Not very pleasant at all, this position. And also his king safety is still pretty bad as well. So for example this, check. Yeah, we're going to win the queen, or mate, whatever. It's pretty nasty, mate in 6. So what a way to play against the a world top 10 player when he's just 15. So poor Shirov. If he hadn't played bishop e4, I mean the best move technically apparently is rook f8. So we don't see that loose piece issue here. And let's see if rook g5 we just take here. So there's immediate pressure. If rook takes f8, a bit of inconvenience with king takes, but then there's no problem. Black is kind of just a piece up, really. I know it's incredible, but Magnus is able to generate luck even when he's 15 against the number 10 player in the world. There's a Capablanca quotation, isn't there? A good player is always lucky, or creates his own luck. I think always lucky, but yeah, it does seem to be very fortuitous that bishop e4. It just happens that in this position, by nudging the queen away from d4 for a moment. Just another brief look at this. You might think queen d6 just to hold d4. Then e4 I think drops, so we just take here. We just take it. e4 is just a loose piece basically. It's a loose piece disaster. You could consider bishop e4 basically a loose piece disaster after this forcing move, which is rook g5. What does black actually do to rook g5 concretely? Yeah, because once white gets that d4, or the queen leaves e4. So let's go on to another game. So fantastic win there from a practical perspective, if not from a theoretical perspective. Now another very, very strong player, Ivan Cheparinov, 2572, was playing white against Magnus Carlsen. And what attracted me to this game example, which is why I want to show it, it's a fantastically aggressive Sicilian Sveshnikov, which was one of my favourite openings when I was a junior. So Magnus Carlsen playing the Sveshnikov classic structure. I know it's wrecked, but you've got the bishop pair, you've got this g file. Let's see what happens. c4. Magnus plays really super dynamic here. He's not playing b4. It just gives white a small edge, a positional edge, or rather large positional edge. No, he in live book the top move is f5, and that's what he plays. White castles, now black castles. Now usually players with white play queen f3 here, but in this game we see c takes, and Magnus plays very aggressive dynamically with d5. I just want to show you the aggression of this opening dynamic play from the Sveshnikov. So after now e takes, we're going still 15 games in live book with this position, and usually players with black play queen b4 here, and apparently queen b4 virtually kind of equalizes, because I think we're utilizing this great diagonal. It virtually should be about equal, this position apparently. I mean, yeah, it's dead zero my evaluation here at depth 18, this position here. But Magnus played actually rook b8, so very sacrificial, very Tau-like. So he's got a Tau-like style this year for sure in some of these games. It might not be the soundest. Okay, clearly white doesn't have to take here, because then rook takes b2, and then this knight's hanging as well. So white plays a much better move, rook ab1. Technically white's doing okay, doing well. Now instead of even taking here, Magnus just switches the rook in for the attack. So beautiful stuff. By the way, this is pinned to the queen. You can't ever take on d3 at the moment. Queen e3, rook g6. So here it's just really dangerous looking, this rook swing. So we've got a powerful dark squared bishop. I know the queen side's like crumbling. Maybe white should have taken here, but he played actually bishop c2. Now black is at least equal here. Queen h4 from engine view. Queen h4 with lots of threats now in the air, like bishop e5. Crude but dangerous. b6. King h8 repairing, potentially doubling against g2. So beautiful attacking chess. Rook g8. g3. This might have been a mistake. Perhaps better is rook fe1 apparently. Rook fd1. After g3, queen h3. Nasty rook h6 idea is on the cards here. If white had played like this, and we have this, then there's queen g3 here, and this would be very nice for white. But yeah, this g3 kind of doesn't help white's king too much. So after rook h6, there's now always this king chase, a bit of king chase coming up. Queen f4. And now we see bishop f6, which introduces now the idea of bishop g5 among other things, to harass the poor queen, to kick her out. This move is, yeah, it's interesting. So knight e5. So now Magnus takes on no, sorry, pardon me. It looks as though Magnus could take on h2 here, and you're right. This would be good, taking on h2. Should be quite nice. There's also, I mean, even rook h4 here. Black's position is actually really quite aggressive. You know, even with rook h4 takes here. If we go here, you know, this position here is better for black apparently. Like this, it's such an aggressive position. Yeah, this position, I know it's looking crazy, but you know, black's better at the end of it. Yeah, going some distance, but it just shows that you know, after bishop takes d8, yeah, black's going to be, you know, up. But anyway, we see here after knight e5. Also, you know, queen h2 is good with the same idea of rook h4. By the way, this is still good in this position. Rook h4 here, because if we ever take here, then we take the queen, and if we go with this line again, and it's sort of similar to what we've seen with the check here, Yeah, this king chase here is pretty dangerous for white. We've seen this kind of thing. So anyway, but Magnus plays bishop takes e5, which maybe isn't technically as strong, but it's still pretty strong. It's still very good. So queen f4. We see rook g4, and still, you know, white's in trouble here. Queen c7, rook g8 protecting the bishop. Now rook e1 was played, and now Magnus finally takes on h2, and a bit of a king chase here. Queen takes f2, and here wrenching open diagonals. Can you see what black played here if I give you 5 seconds starting from now? Okay, rook h2 is very strong as well, by the way, mate in 10, but f4 looks pretty strong as well, just with the idea of bishop g4. We see queen c3, f takes, yes, it's a vicious position to be in. Bishop g4 check, and now rook c8 winning the queen. I thought, what a wonderful Sicilian Sveshnikov from an aesthetic point of view, the way black continued, did the attack here. So white resigns here. Say B7, by the way, we can take on E1 using the pin, then take on E4. Oh dear. And then we can take the queen, and then yeah, it's not a big problem, that pawn there. We're going to end up mating the white king soon, just for those interested. Okay, so and rook h1. So if we look at this game, I thought it was a beautifully played attacking Sveshnikov, really aggressive stuff, really in the spirit of Sveshnikov. So Magnus Carlsen playing like Tal-esque quite a lot with this rook b6, this beautiful stuff, just letting his queenside go. So that's how to play sometimes the Sicilian Sveshnikov. I'll call that a model game actually. So in this next example, okay, here Magnus Carlsen is playing in the Norwegian Championship in Sandnes, Norway. So he's playing against Gerson Talekson Ostmo, 2-3-4-9, and here black just played queen f3, and now again, Magnus is Tal-esque this year for sure. Guess what white plays here? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, yeah, knight takes h6 check, wrenching open black's king safety. Immediate threat, rook g5, checkmate. So black's king starts taking a walk with king g7. The king comes out to play. Yep, rook sacrifice, beautiful stuff. Bishop c1, threatening now rook g4 check, with mating the black king to follow. So c takes d4, rook g4 check. And the queen has to go in front now. It's sick, because if here, then rook h4 is checkmate. I know the king's been drawn up the board, so the queen went in front, and yeah, it's pretty dire after that. Magnus can take the queen at leisure. It takes it now. Black's rooks are not really up to much here. White's controlling that c2. Very accurate move here, king g2. Just with the idea of h3 mating. So this is now mating here after queen g7, g4 check, and splat. Queen takes d4. So another wonderful attacking display for Magnus Carlsen in the Norway Championship. So this is the queen f3, knight takes. You might wonder, yeah, well, what else? Rook g5 basically forced king h6. Yeah, it's just black's king safety has just been totally stripped bare there. So wonderful attacking chess. Now, this is a player you might be familiar with. Magnus Carlsen was playing Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, who was 2-5-2-7 at the time. They're about evenly rated. Magnus is only 2-5-2-8 in the 6th Laws on Young Masters. So now here, okay, Maxim Lagrave, MVL, plays NVL plays knight f7, and a wonderful move now for Magnus in this position. Okay, he's a pawn down, but black's got king safety issues, and that's totally highlighted with this next move. Fantastic attacking conception. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, what would you play as white here? Okay, Magnus played knight f6 check. Also, actually, it's such a good position. Rook h1 is good. Now here, the move would be f6. Apparently not check here. It's not as good. This position is still good for white, of course. This one here, but the way Magnus finishes this game is elegance. Knight f6 check. So totally forcing black's options, because if king h8, then we just mate with rook h1 check. So that's mating, because here we've got rook takes h6 and then rook g8 checkmate. So it's totally restricting black's options. So g takes, we have check, and now the point here is rook g6 with just this thumping move coming up. Rook h takes h6. All Viol can do is throw in a few checks. Throws in a few checks. Get to this position, check. And now king e6. And he resigned here. The checks are running out. If check here, then king d7. And then, you know, we're still faced with with this one. Yeah, it's elegant. It's an elegant finishing off this knight f6 check against NVL, who's now a world-class GM as well, of course. Beat Cheparinov recently at the time of this video, just a few days back. So this next example, Magnus seems to have pieces pointed at White's king intuitively, but White technically is doing okay apparently, because there's a compromised back row theoretically here. So Magnus's opponent is Alexander Ryantsev, a very strong opponent. This is in the Warsaw tournament, a European Championship, the 6th Warsaw tournament in 2005. So Magnus is in a difficult spot actually. If we consider, for example, if he simply moves his rook to a3, then this back row is really sensitive, and there's a really crushing blow here. What would you play with White here if I gave you 5 seconds? Okay, knight b7. So it's immediately threatening rook d8 check and stuff, among other things. Knight takes c5. And if bishop takes, then queen takes here. And rook takes b7. We see that back row being blown apart. Now White's just got such a dominating position. He's got things like bishop h6 on the cards. If say rook here, then bishop e1, keeping lots of ideas like rook c7 here. So this is very bad news for Black. With best play from White, it's bad news. So anyway, but Magnus, he played actually this move rook f3, and this is the best move. Black with this move is threatening to put treble pressure on g2, so rook f2 is on the cards, and if g takes, then we see the beautiful coordination of the dark and white squares with bishop takes f3, bishop takes g2, checkmate. So yeah, this move rook f3, a great one. So White now slips up. He should have actually still played this idea of knight b7 in this position. It blocks that whole diagonal. If rook f2, we just play rook d8 check, winning the queen. If bishop takes b7, then not here queen takes e6, but actually there's a move here which is good for White. Can you spot it? If I gave you 5 seconds here. Okay, bishop a5 to play this. So yeah, this is awkward, but difficult position. Magnus's opponent actually plays bishop c3, and now we just have this rook f2 idea, so threatening bishop takes g2. Yeah, it's a lovely queen on a8 for the attacking power. White now, is in a terrible state. He plays rook d2, and it's just the mate in 2 now. Bishop takes g2, and whatever White does, it's mate next move. If he plays, he resigned here. If he plays king g1, then rook takes f1, double check and mate. If he plays bishop takes g2, queen takes g2. Yeah, so fantastic stuff. It seems, this battery on g2, what a way to increase the pressure via rook f3. Yeah, all of black's pieces are working well together there, but there is a back row issue, so this could have backfired on black with knight b7 because of this issue, which wasn't fully made use of. But you know, Magnus is not playing computers. He's generating lots of fantastic attacking chances here to build up pressure against his opponent's kings. Very Tal-esque. So here now, okay, Vladimir Malakov against Magnus Carlsen. A 26-70. Magnus is 25-70. This is in the FIDE World Cup, Khanty-Mansisk, Russia, towards the end of 2005. So in December, 12th of December. Now, in this position, it looks as though Magnus has totally, completely, from earlier in the game, outplayed his opponent with this A-file pressure, with this pass pawn here. White's king looks vulnerable now on this diagonal potentially. We see knight takes f4 from white, but it's up to black to really finish things off here. What does Magnus play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds here to pause the video. Okay, rook takes c3. Wow, what is going on here? Well, the first point, if takes with the queen, then we just play queen takes f4. We can't do that. So rook takes c3. Well, another point, if knight takes e6, then check here. And in this position, rook d3, taking here, taking here. Peace out, thanks very much. So, rook takes c3 was played. Now bishop takes b4. So black is now threatening just to take here and take here. We see Malakov in a bad state here. He plays knight takes e6. Check. Now queen takes e6, just keeping that pin. So Magnus is going to get his exchange back. He controls the dark squares a lot here. And the game continues like this, so winning that centre pawn now. So 2 pawns up, thanks very much. Yep, rook d8, nasty threats still. Rook d3, c3, and white had enough here. It's going to be terminated with rook d2 if he's not careful. For the moment there's a pin though. So let's have a quick look at this final position. White resigned. If he plays this, then there's rook takes h3. That's the killer. Actually, that's the killer point. Winning the queen. Rook takes h3 check. Whoa! Yeah, that's the killer point. Pardon me, not rook d2. So c3 crushing there. Yeah, but it was a totally crushing game. It was actually a positional masterpiece earlier as well. It's just the tactics flow beautifully from the better position. But yeah, what a crisp way to finish off with this one. c3, leaving the queen loose. Okay. Now this is a mega large example. Excuse me, but I got to show you it. It was against Gatakamsky. So 15th December, again in the FIDE World Cup, Khanty-Mansisk. So 15th of December, and knight takes c6 was played. Magnus really set the ball rolling in the Sicilian by now playing, guess what? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, knight d5. And okay, that's the wham bang move, but now in this position, guess what he plays? Just very, very calmly. Just c4, just casually, just being a piece down here. White's going to build up. He doesn't want to drop d5. He's going to build up with things like bishop g5, or even b3 first. So black plays b4. So although black's piece up, the chances from an engine point of view is that white is light here slightly. So we see this f6 check. the game continued quite a bit. I just want to show you now the game. It's just a remarkable game in this position, offering us another piece sacrifice with Queen F3 after takes Queen F6. And black does have the opportunity to steal castle, which he uses, so white gets a rook. So a rook for the two pieces, but this pawn chain is really quite nice against the bishop on b7. So the game continued actually quite a bit, so I'll just show you the moves briefly. I think it might be video annotated on the channel actually in detail on this game. So I just want to show you what happened. So Magnus got this position, and yeah, it is technically better for white. White's grip on the position, the rook versus the two bishops, is not bad here because white dominates that e file. So black was never able to wriggle out that easily here, because actually he is actually worse. And now he's faced with this onslaught on the queen side from Magnus. You can't ever take here, because I think that's a disaster with not with rook e8 actually, but funny enough with b5 first to rip open this line, and then we played check, and then queen takes b5, and there's just enormous threats. So yeah, this sort of thing is difficult to defend. We see fg being played, hg h5, b5 happens, queen c7, Magnus takes this. And he's still better in this ending, the rook against the two bishops. The bishops are not really that brilliant. Rook e8. So getting the rooks off potentially or not. No, not really. Now here on d6, if he took on there, actually black might apparently be okay. This is harder for black to deal with. Just this issue here. Although it seems as though king c5 would be useful. The problem with king c5 is rook e7, double attack on both loose bishops. So yeah, this is pretty nasty stuff. And now we see the forcing of the loose pieces, both of them with c5, to get the king away from b7. So he's forcing that loose piece on b7 for this double attack. So now he's just exchange up. Yeah. Yeah, a very Tal-esque game, really. I mean, it just, the practical difficulties put on Gatakamsky in this game were staggering from the opening. So a fantastic sacrificial game, which I had to show you, even if very briefly. But it is in detail annotated on the channel. I'll try and give a link maybe on the right for the actual detailed annotation of this game. But a fantastic game towards the end of 2005 with knight d5. Very Tal-esque. I think you've got to agree. Black really had huge difficulties throughout the entire game there after that. This next example against Predrag Nikolic 2676. So Magnus is 2553. This is early January, 28th of January 2005. So what's going on here? Well, black played rook ae8. And a fantastic move here, exploiting this dark square bishop in particular. That's evident in these variations now. What does white play if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here? White to play. Okay, knight g5 check. So if the king moves, we're just going to take on e6, if nothing else. But apparently there's an even stronger move in queen h5, but taking on e6, yeah. So we got to take that. Now check, and note that the rook's on f4, there's no queen f4 here. So king g8, and now what? What does Magnus play in this position? 5 seconds? Okay, rook takes e6. Because we've got this queen f8, it's a lovely deflection. If takes, we just play queen f8 checkmate. And if the rook moves here, then I think we just play rook e7. Let's have a quick look, check at this, rook e7. Yeah. It's wonderful stuff from white's perspective. Yes, crunch. Now here, in this example, this is against Michael Prazak, Magnus playing white. So it came from a variation of Sicilian dragon, a well-known one. Now black plays a very tactical move here, trying to exploit the loose bishop on c4. Black played knight c3. And yeah, it looks, you know, pretty dangerous actually. Knight c3. White first took on d8. Okay. Now here, if white plays a normal move like knight takes c3, then bishop takes c4 is actually a little bit better for black. This bishop would have to move, and then say bishop d5. This is a bit better for black. So Magnus is not interested in knight takes c3. Queen takes c3 is a little bit better actually for white. This position, even if the c4 bishop is lost, apparently this, you know, this is good because we can take here. This is okay for white, just about. But even stronger, Magnus plays a much stronger concept here in this position. Can you guess if I give you 5 seconds? Okay, he gets rid of that loose piece on c4. He just takes here, not minding rook d1 check. So rook d1 check, winning the queen. Queen takes. Knight takes. You might think, what's the point of this? Because if we play rook takes, right, then surely black, you know, he's got the queen and the bishop. Surely he can't be that much worse. Apparently even this position is okay for white actually. It's difficult for black to do much. The bishop's kind of blocked in. It's a very good blockade. But even stronger here, instead of the ordinary recapture, guess what white plays? Bishop b3. The knight is not going anywhere. It's stranded. This bishop's controlling e3 and f2. It gives itself up there just for a pawn. So now we've got quite a lot of pieces for the queen. It's like +3 for white. White's easily dominating this position. This bishop is particularly miserable, it's got to be said. So white's just invading here quite comfortably. Black's just falling to bits. I mean, what else? White is now threatening knight f6 check, and then putting a rook here to take on f7 soon anyway. So yeah, now Magnus just gets the queen back, piece up. Yep, very nice calculation there. So with the loose piece, Magnus doesn't mind this position. He just dominates the position here. Very nicely calculated. Queen sack idea after bishop takes e6 with this knight stranded. This calm retreat here, bishop b3, because the knight's not going anywhere. You might think, well, is knight c3 any better? Not really. Knight c3, I think we just take here. We're controlling all the squares. So lots of material for the queen there. In this example, now, this is another fantastic game from the start, which I just have to show you. So Magnus is playing like this Slav, but not in a dull manner. After queen b3, e6 is gambiting the b7 pawn. Now, what choices were there? I mean, if he had played rook b8, he's going to lose d5, surely. In fact, stronger is to take on d7 first, then take on d5. So it means he's going into this gambit. So e6, queen takes b7, and we see knight c takes e5. And black's already doing well from an endgame perspective. This is a great position to have. I mean, white perhaps shouldn't have done this. In fact, queen b3. The move was apparently g4, better move g4, and then just the calm move, even knight d3 apparently. So white's forgetting about this b7 and just trying to torture d5 slowly. I think he's got things like bishop g2 on the cards. That's the way white should have played it. But this queen b3, yeah, this is a bit adventurous. So Magnus taking on at e5. Doesn't mind about the a7 pawn. You remember the Sicilian Svechnikov, for example, from earlier. If he can switch a rook in for the attack, and he does so very stylishly here, after queen a4, that queen's a great tempo gainer now for potentially rook b4. The immediate rook b4, queen d1 might help white, so actually it's not used here immediately. It's castling, bishop e2. Knight takes e5. Now white castles. Now we see it here, rook b4, so the rook's swinging across, potentially menacing h2, for example. Queen d1, queen f6. So yeah, these pieces are all conspiring against white's king to take revenge for the pawn that was munched over here. So, okay, white's a pawn up, but yes, are these pawns going to queen before black gets a major attack here? g3, weakening some light squares. Apparently in this position d4 is technically very strong, by the way. For example, takes this is diabolical, bishop h3. We've got a vicious attack going here with queen g6. So d4 would have been strong here. You know, even if this happens, rook d8 or bishop h3. This is a strong position for black. There's enough pressure, but we see queen g6, which is still good for black and introduces interesting possibilities. Even bishop c2 is introduced by this. So b4, bishop drops back. Again, d4's in the air though now. The rook and bishop are coordinating for that d4 move if needed, to try and wrench open this diagonal, try and pin that pawn. Bishop b2, knight g4, immediately threatening knight h2. Now white should have snapped this off. That's apparently the best move to snap it off, but it's still diabolical apparently. It's still +2 for black now, so it's a pretty diabolical position. If g takes, knight takes e3 check, winning the queen. Yeah. So yes, pretty nasty. Bishop f3. Knight takes h2. Now we see bishop g2. Vicious attack now, but just bishop g4. Yeah, Magnus is getting into these light squares. White gets desperate here. I mean, it's a totally busted position. So white Gadir Gusinov 2391. If he moves the queen, then just check is a forced mate in 3 after taking. White's going to be mated on h1. Dear oh dear. So he desperately plays knight takes d5, introducing knight e7 check. I think Magnus spots that. He takes that first. So queen takes d5. Now here, white does control f3, so knight f3 check is better for white actually after bishop takes. Yeah, you can't do that, but the queen is nudged away gently, as we've seen in an earlier example, just nudged away gently. Can you see what black does to nudge the queen away gently from f3? Or try to nudge it away. Rook h5. And white resigned here. If he plays queen e4, then that can actually be taken. And then we have knight f3 check with a forced mate in 2. Because king g2, rook h2 is checkmate. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3 is mating on h1. Any queen move here, in fact, in this position, apparently the strongest is to focus on f3 with queen f5. One of the strongest might be this, yeah, because there's never going to be any f3 move because of the e3 dropping. So yeah, once black gets in knight f3, that's it. So yeah, beautiful stuff there. Really punishing white from this early pawn hunting exercise after queen b3. So the way to play it was actually more boring but safer without all these queen moves, giving black loads of tempos on his queen and a vicious attack. But it was interesting, you know, how even like taking on e5 opened up this line for that rook to switch across. You know, when black took here, I mean that's instructive for the attacking player, these sorts of games. Black's initiative is gigantic here with that rook able to switch in for the attack. Absolutely fantastic attacking chess. I think we'd all be proud of. And this is Magnus at 15. So very Tal-esque year from many of these examples so far. Now this game is against Atle Gron, a 2-3-9-4 Norwegian championship. I think we've seen this example in an earlier Magnus Carlsen sacrifices video, but let's go for it again. So black now played b6. Can you guess what Magnus plays here? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, knight takes f7, yeah. Wow. It's just, you know, black's pieces all huddled on the queen side, and if king takes, queen takes in the game was played, but if king takes, slaughter time, f5, and this is just slaughter, isn't it? It's just like loads of things are happening. Queen g6, so queen takes, trying to minimize the damage, but still f5, and we see now here this position. Bishop takes e6 was played, knight d7, and now a beautiful move. What does Magnus play here, do you think? Getting a vicious discovery attack possibility against the queen, that's the clue. He plays f6. So white is threatening now bishop g4 check to win the queen. So knight takes, and it's attacking the queen now. So bishop g4 is not quite working because the knight takes e4. So we need to eliminate that knight first to keep this discovered check idea. So rook takes f6. So now we've got this on the cards, among other things. There's also things like queen takes c6 here. So black gets out of the way of bishop g4 check. Black plays queen takes h4, and white could of course just take the queen. Actually, that's +7 for example, but he actually goes for the mate here more crisply with queen takes c6 check, and here rook f7 check, beautiful king hunt, queen c4, crisp finish, check mate. That's the Norway Championship, really making a name for himself with these fantastic games and finishes. Not quite a Patzer in the next game, Elizabeth Patz, although Patz by name but not Patzer by nature. 2-4-2-1, playing white against Magnus Carlsen. But her king is potentially in more danger than Magnus's king, and this is from a Del Petrov opening from earlier. So this is in the 6th Lausanne Young Masters. Okay, so what does Magnus play here? What would you play here to accelerate your own attack? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, very energetic move, b4, trying to open up the lines very quickly. If you don't play like this, say you play bishop d6, this is actually a bit wrong, actually. Because h6, you know, say like this, it's easy for, you know, one move could make all the difference here. Because now after bishop e5, queen f4, you know, these dark squares could be in trouble. So if we try and win a pawn here, queen d4, and you see, yeah, the dark squares are in trouble quite quickly, and it could turn out to be in white's favour very easily this game, very easily. You know, for example, like this, disaster. So black has to be extremely wary that, you know, this business is quite dangerous. So b4, bishop takes, queen takes, h6 to try and get these weaknesses going. But But black here controls the two pivot squares into G7. Both of them are controlled here. So we see black still now is going to like tear white's king to shreds. So C takes. But now C3, yeah, this looks pretty nasty. B3. But isn't black controlling the key A5 square? Doesn't matter because now there's C2. Rook D3 controls C3. Okay, fine. So where's the attack? Queen D6 now, keeping control of that F4 for that to avoid that pivot. So attacking whilst making sure there's no attack against his own king. A3, but now loose piece alert. Queen A6. The attacking player makes use of loose pieces a lot of the time. So here, very important to use the loose piece on here. There's no time, I think, for this invasion via F6. White played King D2 here. If here, for example, in fact, black, even better than taking here, there's a forced mate in 3 with S queening. So there's no time for that. So King D2 was played. But again, Queen takes A3 now, and there's still C1 on the cards. White resigns here. Yeah. And another game now against Maxim Legrave, who was playing white against Magnus here. So Maxim Legrave 2527 in that Lausanne Young Masters. So Maxim plays a fascinating move just from a loose piece perspective. You can consider double weakness as the last move to include creating loose pieces. He plays actually Bishop B2. So what does black play here? I'll give you 5 seconds. Yes, loose piece alert. B2 is loose. How can we exploit it? Rook takes C4. But there's a bit of a nuance here. White plays Bishop takes G7. In this position, what do you play with black? Magnus plays the best move. He doesn't take on G7 here, which might actually give white some sort of counterplay, potentially. Some sort of play with two, the rook against the knight and bishop. No, much stronger move here. Rook takes C2. That C file is very handy for this rook and for getting at white's king. There's no time to get the queen over here because we've got F2 eyed up. Queen G5, we just play queen takes F2. So it's taken, and now we take here. We've got this C file, so rook C8 is useful at some point. Check. Rook D1. If white played rook C1, this is a lot better than the other continuation. E5, and black's got knight F4. It's just very nasty. So the game continued only a little bit longer after rook C8. Yeah, maybe Maxim was really annoyed. His basic bishop B2, yeah, loose piece. It loses games instantly to have loose pieces. I mean, in a lot of cases, as we've seen from many of these sacrifice videos. But here, white resigned. Yeah, Maxim was only in his development, but he's still, even so, he's 2527 at the time. Bishop B2, yeah, it's just punishable with rook takes C4. So Magnus is alert like a hawk, tactically alert like a hawk for these opportunities. So here, in the Goulsden Vigers 2005 tournament against Austin Hole, Magnus is playing white, actually. Black just played knight C6. Guess what Magnus plays here, if I give you 5 seconds. So Austin Hole is a 2-3-3-6 opponent. 5 seconds. Okay, bishop H6, so threatening mate. Rook G8 was played. If G takes, Now here, white has two strong moves, queen e4, knight c6. So queen e4 forces basically f5 after takes. Queen takes to protect h7, queen takes c6 is good for white. This is quite good for white, this position. So black's crumbled a bit there. Yeah, black played rook g8. That might have actually been technically the best move to take here, actually. That's the engine suggestion. But rook g8 was played. This is brilliant stuff. Tal would be proud. What does white play here? 5 seconds. Bishop takes h7. Wow, carnage. Yeah, what is going on, you might ask? Well, if g takes, now we've got queen takes g8, checkmate. So black plays king takes h7, and now beautiful move, bishop e3 threatens queen h5 checkmate. Among other things, it's also looking at the queen, so knight f5 would be double attack on the queen and other stuff. So black plays rook c8, at least addressing queen h5 immediately, but it doesn't address this other one. So here, double attack time, 5 seconds. Even better than knight f5 apparently is what Magnus played, knight takes e6. Looking at the queen, looking at g7. Yeah, so Magnus now slips in this check before winning the queen, and this other one taking the pawn with check. Now wins the queen. Has black collected enough pieces? Not really. Here the devastation continues after knight takes a5. All these pieces ready for that queen to be skewing them all. It's unbelievable stuff. Rook c7 was played. Knight takes. I mean, if you might think it's better to take here. This is double attacking both pieces. They're going to drop. Those pieces drop. So yeah, black chose to lose the piece like that. Queen b3 now was played in this position, and black resigned because there's another loose piece alert here. If black plays rook takes c6, then we've got queen f3 check. So yeah, I think black's fed up by this point and just resigns, gives up, waves the white flag here. So this queen f3 check is pretty nasty. Yeah, this was an unbelievable year for rich tactical games. So Magnus Carlsen playing black in this next example against Sebastian Bogner, 2409. Very interesting opening, I thought I'd show you. Black to play here. Very interesting move just from a theoretical perspective. I know probably a lot of you know the theory, or some of you know the theory here. Apparently though, bishop f4 is one of the top moves played, 5 games. It's a small amount of samples in Livebook. Guess what Magnus played here in this position? I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, rarer, slightly rarer, knight f6. It seems to invite e5, that's the point. You know, because of this king in the centre. So e5 is played, but now knight d5. And all of a sudden there's an idea of this knight f4 to try and wrench the queen away from h3. So white dare not play e takes d6. It's a draw though with best play with check. This position black can force a draw with a seesaw knight check. Like this. But yeah, white avoids that. He plays actually d4. The bishop just drops back. So it's a gambit, still a gambit opening Magnus has played. Very interesting gambit opening, that's why I'd like to show you. So the queen drops back to h7. I know it's crazy. The queen's keeping an eye on h3, but this knight perhaps should have been restricted here with a3, a simple move just to stop knight b4. In the game, though, the knight was kicked immediately, which is unfortunate, because now knight b4 threatens knight c2 to take the pawn, the centre pawn. So the awkward-looking knight a3 had to be played here. And after castling queenside, black's position looks fantastic. The game continued like this. Just briefly, I just wanted to show you. So g5 gives a nice place for the knight, potentially. c5 crumbling white's centre. Trying to crumble white's centre. Bishop takes c5. So offering g5, but getting e5 now. And it doesn't matter that white has this check. You know, black's got fantastic position here. It's a crushing position. Rook d3. This is actually starting to be a crushing position anyway. So look at all of black's pieces and look at white's pieces. Knight c2 was played. I think difficult to defend here. If f3, for example, rook h5, and then rook takes f5 after, it's pretty nasty. So it's pretty miserable. White's fragmented. Pawn structure doesn't bode well. So it just gives up that. If he had taken here, by the way, I mean, if he had protected like this, again, just rook h5 will do to try and, you know, just take on f5. If here, then f6. We're going to take on f5 soon. So yeah, white's in a bad state. So he's getting the feel of black's piece coordination. Check. Bishop d6. And now this is like 19th century feel to it after c5. Magnus plays rook 8 to h3 check, dragging the king out to play. Rook f3 check. King e4, king walk. The knight stops the use of d3 here. Check. And now black to play here. Actually, there's quicker things than what Magnus played. There's technically a mate in 6. Apparently. But Magnus's move is pretty good as well. It's +5. So what would you play with black? And I'll give you points determining. I'll give you 100 points for the top move, and 50 points for the second and third moves, which include Magnus Carlsen's move. 5 seconds. Okay, if you've said c6, 100 points. It's a forced mate in 6 with c6 check. After takes here, rook takes f5. We've got now on the cards knight g6 mating the king, it seems, in all variations. So if knight d4, there's rook e4. This is a forced mate, threatening knight c4, checkmate. So knight e6 to try and slow things down like this. This is going into a forced checkmate, just from a sort of composition perspective. So it seems the quickest mate here was with c6 check, just for those technically interested. It doesn't matter what white does, it's a forced mate in 5 here after rook takes f5. So knight d4. There's also, instead of rook e4, there's another way of doing it. With rook takes d4, it looks more forcing, but it's the same number of moves. Knight g6. So we're threatening rook d5 here. We take here, now we're threatening not just this but this. Okay, so yeah, okay, that was a forced mate, but that was c6. So give yourself 100 points for that, and 50 points for bishop e7, which is a mate in 7, or Magnus's move, which is knight c6. So this now threatens rook takes f5 checkmate, as well as knight e7 checkmate. And you might think, well, white played knight d4, but if c takes, giving c5 for the king, then rook takes f5 is still checkmate there. So knight d4, black to play here. Well, okay, Magnus played rook takes f5 check. So the idea is, well, white resigned here. If knight takes, then we have knight b4 checkmate, which is quite pretty. Now if king c4, then here white just crumbles totally after bishop takes c5, or rook takes c5 is pretty good as well. But bishop takes c5, there's like 3 pieces on d4, so white's just losing d4. For example, like this. This is good enough to win the game. It's +5. Okay, so yeah, white's kind of resigned here after rook takes f5. Yeah, so well, it's. I just thought I had to show you that game from the attacking opening, the gambit. Now this is against a 2658 Zurab as my Pereshvili. I don't want to pronounce that name too much. Yes, I'll give you the PG in the description if you want to see the spelling of his name. So here, Magnus is actually playing white against Zurab, for short, and Zurab seems to have problems from his hypermodern perk double fianchetto earlier. Magnus had given up voluntarily early in the game the dark square bishop for one of the knights, and had fixed black's pawn structure. In fact, a6 seems to be a big problem for black, whatever he does. For the moment, black played bishop h6, trying to soften white on the king side. Magnus concedes theoretical weaknesses with g3. Then we have rook d8, and it seems as though a6 is there for the taking. Or is it? Well, Magnus thinks so here. He plays actually bishop takes a6, even though this would seem to allow what black wanted now, which is rook takes d1, to take the rook away from the a4 square. So there's always a queen a4 resource if rook takes d1. But this is exactly what Magnus played. He played rook takes d1, inviting queen a4. If queen takes d1 here, then actually these loose pieces are good for queen a8. Or are they? Queen d3 is a double defense here. This is just about bearable. c4 we can just take. It's just about bearable, but it's not such a big deal. For example, this position, black can get back the pawn. It doesn't seem such a big deal at all. The evaluation is only +1 here. So Magnus's move rook takes d1, inviting queen a4, is much stronger actually, because it is staring potentially at black's back row as well. We see queen a4. So black is having to take the time and energy to regain his pawn. Is his queen on an inconvenient square? The bishop now stares at the king through the pawn on f7. Queen takes a5. And it's this bishop on c4 here, which doesn't have a counterpart, which is especially dangerous now, because e6 is played. And yeah, this is difficult to ignore. If, for example, black played f6, can you see what white could play? 5 seconds. Knight takes f6, because we've got e7, discover check, and then we're queening the pawn. So this is a pretty dangerous bishop on c4. So after e6, f takes was played. And the obvious move would seem to be just to take here, right? So king g7. And yeah, white's better here, but is it necessarily that easy to win? Or maybe it's pretty good actually. It's nearly +3. White is threatening things like queen e5 check just to get into the position, then taking on f5 even though the rook's not hanging. But even stronger, after f takes e, beautiful move here was played, which is actually technically a forced mate in 7. So white to play here. What would you play as white? 5 seconds. So don't think about the obvious. Maybe that's one of the many lessons about these attacking games. The obvious would be taking on e6, which I've shown you is good, but when there's a forced mate in 7, that's much crisper, concise. Knight f6 check, believe it or not. What does black do here? If he takes, I mean, he played king h8 in the game. If he takes, then we've got this battery of the bishop and queen. So say here, Queen G8 checkmate. Say here, then it's a mate in 2 off the check here. Mate. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So yeah, King H8 was played. It's still like a forced mate in 6. The rook now comes to D8. And now a forced mate in 2. Black could have delayed things longer, but it would be pathetic to do that. So rook G8 check, and it's a forced mate in 2 here. Whatever, if King F7 or King F6, the same thing. Just Queen takes E6, checkmate. So yeah, after rook G8, Zurab, the 2-6-5-8 had to resign. So totally smashed by Magnus, about 15 at the time, 2005, 2-6-5-8. This is a serious FIDE rating to duff up like this. One more example, and I hope you've enjoyed this selection. This is against Vladimir Malakov, a 2-6-70, another big gun in the FIDE World Cup, where Magnus was the youngest person to qualify to become a world title candidate. Now Magnus has already done a fine job positioning in this game. It's got to be said, that knight on C5 looks particularly impressive. Black played H takes G, and it's a kind of positional sacrifice. It's not a real sacrifice. You might think it's good to keep the dark square bishop. It's not. I guess I just wanted to show you the game, how devastating it was. And this is a little bit of an excuse. So it's not a real sacrifice. Bishop takes F8. There's a beginner rule though, I think, that you should be careful when giving up bishops for the knights. The bishops sometimes are better, especially in endgame positions, especially if the centre's wide open. The bishop pair in the endgames can often be better than knights as a generalization. But here, there's a specific reason to get the attacking potential going after Queen H6. There's an immediate knight G5. White is in such a dominating position. Queen H4, looking at E7, still with knight G5 on the cards. That's the main concern, knight G5. So F6 parrying that. But now Queen G4, King H7, and look at the Queen over there. This is a 2670 Vladimir Malakov with his Queen stuck on A7 with Magnus Carlsen's knight on C5. Positional murder. Forget sacrifices. Absolutely positional murder in this game for Black to have this position. Knight H4, looking at G6, G5 weakening. The light squares are just opening up. There's no defense. Check. Now look at both knights. Wonderful. White's resting immediately. Knight takes E7, checkmate. So Black defends that, but now Queen G6. It's just, there's all sorts of things like Knight E6 here. Or just bringing the rook in. Black just resigned here. So say, what does Black do? What does Black do? Say E6. We just take here. Say B4 is a token move, check. We can take here. And we can actually mate on G8 in some lines. Yeah, it wasn't really a sacrifice. I thought I'd just show you that game just for a laugh. So yeah, you could say, oh, the bishop for the knight if you favour your bishops, but it's a great example of giving up the bishop. Look at the Queen on A7 though; it's totally justified. White's in such a fantastic position. So yeah, a year where Magnus started taking games from the 2600s, from the 2700s like Shirov in 2005. And the year, he became the youngest world title candidate by doing so well in the FIDE World Cup in Khanty-Mansiysk, Russia. This game was the 12th of December, by the way. Fantastic stuff. Hope you got something from it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.